My name is Eric, I'm 24 years old. And I live with my parents and younger brother in a small house on the outskirts of Ohio. I have a steady job at an insurance company. The salary isn't high, but it's enough to cover the electric, water, internet bills, and most of the household essentials. In fact, if I hadn't been handling the expenses, the heater would have stopped working last winter. That Christmas Eve I came home after my shift, still wrapped in my thick coat, with the scent of coffee lingering on my sleeves. The Christmas tree was lazily decorated with old string lights from 3 seasons ago. My mother, Diane, was setting down a plate of ham on the table. My father, Harold, was already sitting at the head of the table holding a wine glass, staring at the ceiling light as if it held the answers to his life. Dinner started in a heavy, awkward silence broken only by the clinking of silverware and a faint Christmas song playing from the kitchen radio. I scooped some mashed potatoes onto my plate and smiled at my brother, Tyler. He's 17 this year. When my father suddenly slammed his knife down on the table, the sharp sound made me jump. "Joanna," he said, locking eyes with me. "You're a burden and you can't live here anymore." I thought I misheard him. I froze while my mother let out a dry, almost panicked laugh, like she was trying to pretend it was just a bad joke. But my father's stare was deadly serious. The room felt frozen. Tyler stopped mid-air, his fork still holding a piece of chicken. He stared at me wide-eyed as if he couldn't believe what he just heard. I slowly set my fork down. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," he said, his voice low and firm. "You've stayed here long enough. This is my house, and I'm saying enough is enough. You need to move out." I couldn't speak. I hadn't stayed because I needed a place to live. I could afford my own apartment. I could live independently. I stayed because they needed me. Because Dad lost his job 3 years ago, and Mom only works part-time at the high school library. They couldn't keep things going without my contributions. And now, on Christmas Eve, they were treating me like a freeloader. Mom opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off. "I've made my decision, Diane." Tyler looked between them like they were strangers. "If they can kick her out this easily," his voice cracked. "Who's next?" I took a deep breath. I didn't want a scene. I didn't need to shout or cry. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave. But they should be ready for the cost of that decision. I leaned back in my chair staring at them. "All right." Dad smirked slightly, like he'd just won some silent war in his head. Mom kept her head down, silent. Maybe she was stunned, or maybe she stopped caring a long time ago. I got up and carried my half-eaten plate to the sink. I didn't want to spend another minute at that table. Before leaving the kitchen, I turned to Tyler and gave him a small nod. He was the only person left in that house I cared about. No one said a word, only the clinking of utensils continued, but it seemed like no one had an appetite anymore. I went upstairs, closed my door, and started packing my clothes. Number tears, no complaints. They wanted me out, so I would go. But starting tomorrow, that heater would go silent, and this house would truly be cold in every sense of the word. I shut my bedroom door, the creaky hinges sounding like a final goodbye. I wasn't even thinking about arguing or begging. They had made their decision, and so had I. No announcements, no explanations. Just action. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, opened my closet, and began folding clothes. Every shirt, every notebook, every little accessory I had bought with overtime pay, all packed into the silent suitcase. This room once comforted me when the world felt too heavy. Tonight it was just a shelter for someone no longer welcome. As I folded my last hoodie, a soft knock came at the door. "Joanna." Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you lock the door?" I walked over and opened it. He stepped in, shoulders hunched against something bigger than the winter cold. "Are you really leaving?" His eyes were red. But Tyler was always strong. He didn't cry, at least not in front of me. I nodded. "They said it, didn't they? And I have no reason to stay." Tyler sat on the bed looking around the now empty feeling room. But if you go, who's going to pay for the electricity? The internet, you know. They can't afford it. I didn't answer right away. Tyler wasn't stupid, he knew. And that's what scared him. I wasn't just his sister, I was the lifeline this house clung to. I know, I said softly. But I can't live my whole life as a walking wallet, Tyler. I deserve to breathe too. I deserve a real life. He was silent for a long time before he whispered. I want to go with you, I froze. You can't, I said gently. You're still in school, you're still a minor. They won't let you leave. Then what about you? Will you go? Who? I smiled. Soft as a promise. As Tyler left the room, he glanced back at me one last time. There was something in his eyes that twisted my chest. Not just sadness, but the awful realization that from now on, he would live with two people who no longer acted like parents. I continued packing, checking every drawer and corner to make sure I didn't leave anything important behind. By the time I placed my suitcase by the door, it was nearly midnight. The whole house was dead silent. Like no one had ever lived here at all. I pulled out my phone, logged into all the bill accounts, and started removing my banking information from each one: electricity, internet, water, the secondary credit card I had opened for Mom. I closed them all in less than 10 minutes. No warnings, no explanations, because I had been warning them with my presence for 4 years. And they never listened. As I wheeled my suitcase down the stairs, I saw the living room light glowing through the crack under the door. No one came to see me off. No one called my name. No apology. I could even hear the TV still playing. They were watching their Christmas program as if nothing had happened. I opened the door without looking back. The freezing wind hit my face like a slap, but I didn't shiver. I just felt free for the first time in years. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, slid into the driver's seat and closed the door. As my hands tightened on the steering wheel, I knew one thing for sure. My life would no longer be dictated by anyone else. And this Christmas night was the beginning of the life I truly deserved. I drove away from the street that had imprisoned me in suffering for far too long. That Christmas Eve there was no snow, but inside I was frozen. Not from the weather, but from awakening. I used to think I was helping a family, but now I knew I was only enabling their dependence. And in gratitude I arrived at Marissa's place close to midnight. She was a close colleague of mine, living in a 2-bedroom apartment, just a 10-minute drive from our office. When she saw me standing at her door with a suitcase and dark circles under my eyes, Marissa didn't ask many questions. She simply opened her arms and pulled me into a tight hug. "Stay as long as you need," she said, then led me into the living room, where I would sleep for the next few weeks. The next morning, as the sun rose above the rows of old brick houses, I sat at Marissa's small wooden table, opened my laptop and began my silent retaliation. I logged into the utility payment portal under the account section. My name was still listed as the responsible party. I clicked remove. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to leave this account? After removal, bills will no longer be automatically paid." I confirmed. Then came the internet bill, water, gas, and even the Amazon Prime account. My mother used to stream movies every night. I removed my credit card information from every system. For them, my support had become an entitlement. Now they would finally understand the value of what they had taken for granted. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled, not out of satisfaction, but because for the first time in years, I had done something purely for myself. No more bills to pay. No more being financially exploited under the name of family duty. The next few days passed in rare peace. I went to work on time, had dinner with Marissa, and read before bed. Her small apartment was simple but warm, and more importantly, nobody yelled at me for wanting a life of my own. But that peace didn't last long. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was organizing files at the office, my phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. 5 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 1 text from Tyler. The power's been shut off. Dad's screaming all over the house. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too much for too long. An hour later, another message came from Mom. Joanna, what's going on? The internet's down, the TV won't turn on. And your dad's furious, what did you do? I read the message without a shred of guilt. They wanted me gone. They shouldn't expect me to keep funding the home. That no longer had a place for me. That night, while Marissa and I were making a simple dinner, the phone rang again. I wasn't going to answer, but instinct told me to pick up Joanna. I don't know what's happening. The power's out, the bills haven't been paid, and we can't even watch Netflix anymore. Mum's voice trembled, full of fear and confusion. Who do you think has been paying for all that the past 4 years? I asked, calmly. Silence. Then Mum's voice, soft, almost guilty. You, but your father thought exactly. I cut her off. You believed what Dad said. Now both of you need to live with your choices. I hung up at the time. I thought it was over. I assumed once the services were shut off, they'd adjust, but I had underestimated Dad's dependence and pride. The next day, I got an email from the bank. Alert. Suspicious login attempt from an unfamiliar device. I checked immediately. 3 failed login attempts, followed by a password reset request. My heart sank. One name came to mind. Dad. And I called Tyler. His voice was low and tense. Joanna, I think Dad's trying to get into your bank account. I saw him holding Mom's old notebook where she wrote down passwords. I gripped the phone tighter. Thanks, Ty. I'll take care of it. I sat down and began changing every password. Bank accounts, emails, streaming services, even food delivery apps. Layer after layer of security went up. A silent message. I was no longer the obedient daughter they could control. I thought, after updating everything, activating 2-step verification and removing all access, it would end. I hoped they would learn to fend for themselves. But I was wrong. My family didn't know how to live without someone to blame, and without me to target. They spiraled 3 days after I left. Tyler texted during my shift. Internet got cut off this morning. Last night, Mum had to cook on the gas stove because the microwave's dead. This morning, Dad punched the fuse box. I didn't reply. I simply put my phone down and took a deep breath. I knew that house was sinking into chaos, and I knew this was just the beginning. That night, leaving the office, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom. By the 7th, I picked up. Her voice was hoarse, crying, confused, furious. Joanna, what have you done? The house is dark, no TV, no hot water, your dad's losing it. What did you do? I answered calmly. I only turned off what I was paying for. From now on, you can take care of yourselves, right? You can't do this, Mom shrieked. This is your home. I pressed my lips together, studying my voice. No. It's the place where Dad kicked me out. Remember, I'm just following orders. Silence. Only heavy breathing came through the line. Finally, she whispered, Your dad thinks you're trying to get revenge. I let out a dry, exhausted laugh. No, Mom. I'm just living my life. What bothers you is that I'm no longer living it for you. I hung up before she could say another word. I didn't need to explain any more. They were used to my silent endurance. Now they would have to get used to my silent absence. The next morning, another alert from the bank. Suspicious login attempt, possible fraud blocked. I didn't have to wonder. The only person desperate enough to hack into my accounts was Dad. I immediately called Tyler. He whispered when he answered, his voice full of worry. Joanna, I think he's digging through Mom's old notebooks. He keeps yelling that he needs to get back what belongs to the family. I closed my eyes, feeling a painful tightness in my chest. Did you see him using the computer all morning? He keeps trying to log in and cursing when it fails. I chuckled bitterly. Good. The alerts are working, Joanna. Tyler said slowly. He's starting to say weird stuff. Like that girl thinks she's won, and I'll make her regret it. I'm a little scared. I gripped the phone. If anything strange happens, lock the doors and call me immediately. Got it. I'll keep my phone with me all night. I hung up, went back to my bank account. Increased the security level and blocked all foreign devices. I changed the password again, this time 16 characters long, packed with special symbols, and linked everything to fingerprint verification. No more loopholes. That night I didn't sleep well. A gnawing unease sat heavy in my chest. A feeling that this wasn't over. And I was right the next morning. Just as I stepped out of the bathroom, Marissa called out from the living room. Joanna, someone's banging on the door. I rushed out, hair still wet, and saw her tense face. Who is it? Not sure, but he's pounding hard. I crept to the peephole, my heart dropped. It was my father. He stood in the hallway, fists hammering the door, eyes bloodshot, voice echoing, Joanna. Open up, you think you can just walk away? Mercer looked at me, panicked. Are you calling the police? I nodded, already dialing 911. As the call connected, I stared at the shadow pounding outside and thought, you pushed me out of your house. You don't get to force your way into my life now. I pressed the phone to my ear as Dad kept slamming against the door, shouting, Joanna. You think you're so righteous. You think leaving solves anything. Marissa stood trembling behind me, clutching the door key but frozen in place. I nodded reassuringly, then turned back to the phone. Yes, he's my father. But he's threatening me and trying to break into my friend's apartment. The dispatcher stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and do not open the door. They'll arrive within 3 minutes. I hung up, my heart pounding, but my hand steady on the lock. Through the peephole I saw Dad pacing the hall, muttering, shouting. Hammering the door, ungrateful after everything I did for you. Marissa whispered behind me. This has gone way too far. I nodded, I know. But he needs to understand he has no power over me anymore. The sound of sirens pierced the air. As red lights flashed down the stairwell, I heard the heavy steps of officers running up. One knocked gently on the door. Police, open up. Stay calm. I opened the door and stepped aside. The police officers entered, speaking firmly to my father. Sir, you are disturbing the residents and causing a public disturbance. We need you to leave immediately. My father turned to them, his face flushed red. She's my daughter. I have the right to talk to her. One officer kept his tone calm. Not like this, sir. Your daughter called us because she felt threatened. If you don't leave immediately, we will have to act according to the law. I'm not going anywhere, he roared. Suddenly lunging toward me as if trying to force me to listen, I stepped back, my palms clenched. Feeling my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Immediately the 2 officers restrained him. Sir, please maintain your distance. She owes me. She has no right to treat me like this. He shouted, his voice twisted in rage. I'm her father. I have rights. That sentence, I have rights, echoed in my mind like the final blow. For years, he had used those exact words to impose control and manipulate. But today, I was no longer the 17-year-old girl cowering at the dinner table, afraid of his next outburst. I owe you nothing, I said, clearly locking eyes with him. You chose to push me out of this family, and now you will have to live with that choice. The officers placed their hands on his shoulders, instructing him to turn around. As the cold handcuffs clicked shut, I saw the look in his eyes. No longer that of a father, but of a man who had lost control. "Joanna, you will regret this," he hissed. "You will pay for betraying your family." I said nothing. I just stood there watching him being led away, his furious shouting echoing down the long hallway. When the door finally closed, Marissa stepped closer. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my throat was tight. "I'm okay, I just didn't think it would come to this. You did what you had to do," she said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Sometimes you have to be strong enough to walk away from the things that hurt you most." I sat down on the couch, my hands still trembling. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Dad got arrested," I replied. "Yes. But don't worry, stay put. If anything happens, call me immediately." I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether Dad would be released soon, or if he would try to come back. But this time I was ready. I was no longer the obedient, silent Joanna of the past. I thought that once Dad was taken away, things would calm down, but I was too naive. Just 3 days later, I received a text that made my palms sweat. "Sis, your car is parked outside our house." It was from Tyler. I immediately called him. "Tyler, are you sure my car's still parked at Marissa's?" "I know, but this morning I saw it right outside our house. The window's slightly down, and there's a coffee bag Mom usually uses inside. You should come see." I jumped up, heart racing. My car should never have been there, especially since I had taken all my personal belongings with me. There was only one possibility. My mother had stolen it. I called Marissa to double-check. The spare key still in the drawer at my place, untouched. She confirmed that meant they had a copy of my key I didn't know about. And now my mother, the one who acted pitiful and desperate for help, had secretly taken my car. Without a word, I drove Marissa's car back to my old neighborhood. As I turned onto the street, I saw my car, the dark blue sedan with the familiar plates, parked quietly in front of the house. But quiet didn't mean innocent. I pulled over, got out, and walked toward it. The door handle was dusty, but inside the driver's seat there was a water bottle, unfamiliar shoes, and even a grocery receipt dated 2 days ago, with my mother's name on it. I clenched my fist, staying calm, and called Tyler. "Are you home?" "Yeah, you're here." "I'm outside. Where's Mom?" "In the house, just came back from the grocery store." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I'm coming in. Stay upstairs and don't get involved, okay?" I rang the doorbell. The door opened. My mother stood there, hair tied back, clutching a small black purse. Her face tightened when she saw me. "I wonder, why are you here?" I looked her straight in the eye. "You took my car, didn't you?" She scoffed lightly, stepping aside to let me in. "It was just sitting there unused." "You weren't driving it. I just borrowed it for a bit." "Borrowed?" I let out a humorless laugh. "You've been driving it for a week. Buying gas with whose money? And why is the driver's seat reclined like someone's been sleeping in it?" She turned away, placing her purse on the table without answering. I stepped further inside, glancing at the living room, where the laptop I had left on the bookshelf was now missing. "Where's my laptop?" I asked. Heart pounding, she froze, then replied in an even tone. "I sold it." No excuses, no apologies. "For money?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I needed to buy medicine for your father. And this house needs so many things. You don't live here anymore, so anything you left behind is just left behind." I stood there for a few seconds, then slowly pulled out my phone. "Then you'll have to deal with the consequences. I'm calling the police. I'm your mother, you can't do this." Her voice rose in panic. "Then why could you steal my car and sell my belongings?" I said calmly. I forgave you once, this is the second time, and it's the last. I called 911 when the police arrived. I explained everything, showing the grocery receipt in the car and pulling up GPS tracking logs, proving my car's movements around the city. I made it clear I wanted my property back, and I wanted to press charges for theft. At first, my mother tried to argue, but when asked for proof of ownership of the car or the laptop, she had nothing to show. An officer turned to me. We'll instruct her to gather what remains so you collect it. If you wish, you can file a formal theft report. I looked at my mother. She wasn't shouting anymore. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. Johanna, what are you doing to your mother? She whispered. I answered softly, I'm doing what you should have taught me. Protecting what's mine. I turned away without looking back. 3 days after the police visit, I received a message from an unknown number. You think you've won. You'll regret betraying your family. I stared at the screen. The short, chilling message made my spine stiffen. No signature, no name needed. I knew exactly who had sent it, Dad. I checked the county jail records through the public portal. My heart pounded when I saw the red letters. Released on bail. The release date was this morning, meaning he had been out for less than 12 hours. And the message had arrived shortly after. I immediately texted Tyler. Dad's out on bail, do you know who posted it? A few minutes later he called, his voice so quiet I had to strain to hear too. It was Uncle Mark. Dad's old drinking buddy. Yesterday I heard Dad calling people asking for money. This morning Uncle Mark came to the house, handed Mom an envelope and left. I leaned back in my chair, feeling every muscle tense. Mark, the man who once made the whole neighborhood call the cops with his drunken parties, if he was the one who bailed Dad out. This wasn't just a rescue. It was an alliance, and maybe the beginning of something far worse. Joanna, Tyler continued last night. Dad said he's going to make you feel what it's like to be pushed out of someone's life. I think he's planning something. I jumped up and left Marissa's living room. She was cooking, and when she saw my pale face, she panicked. What's wrong? My dad made bail and he just sent a threatening message. Marissa's face changed instantly. Joanna, you can't stay here anymore. If he knows this address, you think he'll come back? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Someone like him doesn't accept defeat. He already got arrested once for storming this apartment. Now he's got nothing to lose. You have to leave tonight. I bit my lip, clutching my phone tighter. Part of me didn't want to leave. I had found a little peace here. But my mind was clear. If I didn't leave now, something worse would happen. I nodded. Give me a few hours, I'll pack. Marissa gave me a quick hug. That evening I called a coworker named Nora, who had once offered to let me stay with her when she heard I didn't have a permanent place yet. I had turned her down before because I didn't want to burden anyone. But now there weren't many options. Nora immediately said yes. Bring your stuff anytime, there's a spare room. You don't need to explain anything. I packed quickly and silently. Not much, just a few clothes. My laptop, personal documents. The most important things. The rest I would come back for later if I got the chance. As night fell, Marissa and I loaded everything into the car. Before we left, I double-checked the security system one last time. Cameras, smart locks, phone alarms, everything was set. Marissa put a hand on my shoulder. I'll call the police if anything weird happens. Don't worry about me, take care of yourself first. I nodded. Before getting into the car, I looked back at the building one last time. Tonight I wasn't running away. I was choosing to keep living the right way. On the drive to Nora's place, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. You can run, but you can't hide forever. Family is forever, Joanna. I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot and sent it straight to the police department, along with my previous report. In the description box, I typed each word carefully. I am being threatened by the man who used to be my father. I no longer feel safe. I knew he wasn't going to give up easily. But I also knew something else. I was no longer the daughter who silently endured. If he wanted to make me a target this time, I would be a target that fought back. That weekend morning I returned to the old house, the place I once called home, to retrieve what was left. I didn't go alone. A police officer accompanied me. Under a civil standby order I had filed 2 days earlier, Tyler was already waiting on the porch. He held a small backpack, his face showing how exhausted he was. "Are you sure you want to go in alone?" he asked quietly, like even a loud noise might bring all the bad memories rushing back. I nodded, then turned to the officer. "I'm only here to collect my things. If they interfere or touch me, please intervene immediately." The door opened. My mother sat on the sofa, clutching her purse like it was the last thing she could control. My father stood in the kitchen, his gaze cold and silent. I didn't look at them. I just walked straight upstairs, to the room that had been my only refuge for 4 long years. The old closet had been emptied, my belongings stuffed into 2 plastic bags. Some personal items, books, keepsakes, old photos were scattered across the floor. I picked everything up, packed them into my suitcase without letting myself think too much. They were no longer pieces of home, just remnants of a life I had already stepped away from. When I came back down, dragging my final suitcase, my mother stood up abruptly. "You're not going to say anything after everything? You're just going to leave in silence?" I paused but didn't turn around. My voice was even emotionless. "I said plenty in the past and you never listened. It was your father's fault, not mine." I turned, looking her directly in the eyes for the first time in months. "You stayed silent while he humiliated me. You stood by when he kicked me out on Christmas Eve. You sold my belongings like I didn't even exist. And you think I owe you a goodbye?" She didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the floor as if trying to disappear. My father stepped forward, still full of anger. "You think cutting ties is the solution? You're tarnishing your own family." I gave a small cold laugh. "No, I'm just living what this family taught me. If you're not respected, don't stay." I pulled a folded document from my pocket, a copy of a restraining order petition. "If either of you sends another message, shows up where I live, or tries to access my accounts, I'll file this immediately. And next time it won't just be a polite knock from the police." The officer standing beside me nodded in confirmation. "We've made a note in the record. Any further threats will be handled seriously." I turned to Tyler. "You can stay a few more months. But if it becomes unbearable," I meant what I said, "just call me, and I'll come get you immediately." He nodded without saying a word. Between us there was a trust that didn't need to be spoken. I left that house for the last time without looking back. I didn't want to carry any more glances with me. Not from my mother, not from my father. Not from the memories that had once weighed down my heart. That same day I changed my phone number, cancelled every account connected to the old address, and moved in with Nora permanently. She helped me sign a lease for a small apartment near my company, quiet, bright, and most importantly safe. They completely cut off contact with my family. No more messages, no more surprise calls, no more fear every time the doorbell rang. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding everything from scratch, opening a new bank account, buying a new laptop, setting up a new workspace, hanging up each picture on the wall myself. Every small action felt like a declaration. I had chosen this new life, and I deserved it. I knew that one day they might try to reach out. Maybe through a handwritten letter, a distant relative, or some story leaking onto social media. But I also knew this time I wasn't going back. 2 years have passed since I firmly walked away from my old family. As if cutting out a festering tumor from my life, I have built a new life, small, peaceful and entirely mine. But deep down, I always thought about the one person still trapped there, Tyler. He tried his best. He lived quietly in the house I once called home, enduring Dad's unpredictable anger, Mom's endless complaints, and the suffocating coldness that hung over the family. Every time he texted me, Tyler tried to sound, "Okay, I'm fine, sis. It's alright, I'm used to it." But I knew no child should ever have to get used to being treated like a burden, like an unwanted shadow in their own home. I kept my promise. I was always just one call away. But Tyler was different from me. He wanted to leave with dignity on his own terms. "I'll hold on until I'm 18, he once said. "I don't want them to say I gave up halfway." And then that day finally came. When Tyler turned 18, he didn't throw a party or post anything online. He simply sent me a short text. "Sis, I'm ready." I picked him up the next morning. The black backpack on his shoulder held only a few clothes, a couple of books, and a small framed photo. A picture of us from when I was in college. No one came to see him off. The old house sat silent. Windows shut, tight curtains drawn, as if even the sunlight might reveal the emptiness inside. "Not taking much with you?" I asked. As we loaded his bag into the trunk, Tyler shrugged and gave a soft smile. "The rest isn't worth bringing." He moved into the dorms at the community college where I once studied. I helped him with enrollment, bought him supplies, and we had a simple dinner at a noodle shop nearby. We sat across from each other smiling, like two people who had finally woken up from a long nightmare. "Do you think they'll try to find you?" I asked without meeting his eyes. "Definitely," Tyler replied, surprisingly calm. "But I'll do what you did. Cut them off. They don't have any power over me anymore." I squeezed his hand tightly, unable to hide how proud I was of him. Since then we've stayed in close contact. Sometimes he calls just to brag about a good grade, or to laugh about a weird roommate, or a professor obsessed with iced coffee. But every time he calls I can hear it. His voice getting brighter, freer, no longer weighed down by anyone else's expectations. And my parents, after Tyler and I left, everything completely collapsed. Dad couldn't hold down a job for long, constantly fighting with bosses, quitting, then moving to another dead-end job. Mum took a part-time position at a small grocery store. Her paycheck couldn't even cover the bills. Within a year they were evicted from the old house for unpaid rent. The last I heard through a distant relative, they were living in a rundown apartment on the east side of the city, an area known for high crime rates and terrible living conditions. They sent a letter to my old address, passed through someone we barely knew. Inside was a short, bitter paragraph filled with blame and a few desperate pleas. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say and nothing left to give. Everything I had I used to rebuild my own life. No more debts to the past. One autumn afternoon Tyler and I sat by the river after class. The breeze playing with our hair, the setting sun painting the sky orange. He turned to me and smiled. "You know, no matter what happens, I'm grateful I have you. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't believe I could live a different life." I squeezed his hand and looked up at the vibrant sky. "And I know this for sure. Nothing is worth sacrificing yourself for people who refuse to change." We didn't need a traditional family. We just needed each other. Two kids who once lost their way, now walking forward on a path no one could force us off. Our story isn't just about leaving a toxic family behind. It's proof that we have the right to rewrite our own lives. Sometimes to find peace, you have to let go of relationships that only bring pain. Even if they're bound by blood, happiness doesn't come from endless endurance. It comes from the courage to stand up and choose yourself, even if it means leaving with nothing but a suitcase and a brand new hope. What do you think about Joanna and Tyler's decision? Were they too harsh, or was it necessary for their own protection? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional life stories.